that, I want to officially kick off today's session. My name again is Mike. I work with Admit. Admit is a fantastic resource if you are researching or looking to apply to or are in the process of applying to an MBA program. We have a lot of really great features on our site where you can research schools, get advice from our professional team or from other applicants just like yourself, and then also keep everyone updated on where you're at in the process, if you've gotten an interview invite, if you are being admitted to a school, or even where you're attending and why. It's all great to be able to share that with the world, and you can do that on clearadmit.com. So one of the other great things we get to do at Admit is partner with some really, really fantastic institutions like Duke University and the Fuqua School of Business. And today we have two people who are representing Duke. We have our main presenter here today, who is Sheryle Dirks, who is the Associate Dean for the Career Management Center. And for today's session, we will hear mostly from Sheryle. And then we also in the room have Allison Jameson, who is the Assistant Dean of Admissions at the Fuqua School of Business. And Allison's main role today will be to help assist with answering questions. So if you do have questions, you'll want to put those in the Q&A box, which there is one already there. So that's great. Put those questions in, and Allison will be managing the Q&A box throughout the session. If there are some popular questions, we'll make sure that we cover them in more depth at the end of the session. So stick around. And with that, I will pass it off to Sheryle.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Welcome to all of you, and I'm glad to be here with you today, and glad to have both Mike and Allison here during this session. We are going to talk about being a career changer, which is very popular as part of the MBA process. And so what I thought I would do to kind of kick us off and to frame our discussion is to, and to really kick off how we're going to organize our discussion today, is to give you a sense of what we typically see as the 4 different types of career profiles in the MBA programs. I've been with Fuqua for 20 years now, and so have had the opportunity to see literally thousands of students move through the MBA program, and they tend to fall into 4 categories that you see here. The enhancers are people who, tend to be either sponsored by their companies, maybe they're moving through a family business, that type of thing. The entrepreneurs are obviously looking to start their own new venture. Explorers are maybe a form of career changers, but maybe just looking to try something new. And then, of course, we have the biggest category, which are the changers, and that's probably what you're looking here to learn a little bit more about today. And so the way we're going to organize today's discussion is to kind of define what it means to be a career changer, look at how the MBA program is a benefit to someone who is looking to be a career changer, give you some examples specifically from Duke over the last graduating class, recommend some pre-work that you can do in the summer before you start your program, and some general success strategies, and then obviously open it up for Q&A. Because we've got Allison here today, please do keep the Q&A coming. You don't need to wait until the end. She's going to tackle the admissions questions because I want to make sure that you get the best possible advice. And then she will kind of facilitate, gather, coordinate the career questions to make sure that we get those questions answered for you. So obviously we're going to focus on the career changer and just kind of wanted to give you a sense of kind of what the rest of the landscape looks like from an MBA career profile perspective. But keep those questions coming as we move through the content today. So with that, let's go ahead and move forward. So what does it mean to be a career changer, particularly within the context of being an MBA student? And so typically, most people define being a career changer if you focus on changing either the industry or the job function that you're moving from an industry or a job function that you worked in before your MBA program. And so again, just to make sure that we're all level setting here, that the industry means what the company or the organization does, that you're coming out of, say, financial services, manufacturing, a technology environment, whatever that company or organization does, whether it be it makes something or whether it provides a service. And then the function or the job function is what you do there, what your role is. So typically speaking, those are the two big buckets of a career change. And then how you would define that is to look at this grid as being kind of the level of complexity of change on how difficult or challenging that might be. And so what I would like to do at this point in time is have Mike queue up the first poll based on what this grid looks like. And so if we take that the first definition of industry or function, what I'd like you to do is just take your first thought based on what you know today about kind of your career interests and your MBA program. Fill out this poll for us. What type of career change do you envision yourself wanting to make? Do you want to be kind of that traditional career changer, wanting to change maybe a job function or a job or the industry? Or do you want to be that double switcher who wants to change both function and industry? Or do you want to be maybe not so much that traditional changer, but maybe that geographical changer who, if you're an international student, maybe coming from outside the US and you want to go into the US, or maybe you've always worked in a very large company and you want to work in a startup, or maybe you've always worked in small companies and you want to go to maybe a larger multinational. Or quite honestly, you know you want to do something different, but you're just not sure what that is yet. And so then in that case, you would be I'm not sure yet, and you might fall more into that explorer category. And so just based on what you know right now, how would you answer that question? So I'm going to give you a second just to fill that out. And then what we will do is come back to these answers in just a second. And I also want to give you just a second to look at this, to just give you a sense. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory that obviously if you're not looking to be a career changer and you're looking to stay in the same function in the same industry, obviously you kind of have a sense of how to market your job function, your job industry within the MBA context. And so it is a little bit less challenging. If you're looking to change either the job function but not the industry, or you're looking to change the industry but not the function, that's maybe challenging, but obviously the more challenging of those three changes is if you're looking to change both of those. That's considered to be the more challenging of the two. We'll obviously get into kind of success strategies. I'll give you some examples. I'll tell you a little bit about why the structure of the MBA program sets you up for success. So obviously this is not shared to stress you out, to make you think it's not, can't be done, that type of thing, but to just give you a sense as to kind of why the complexity is a little bit different if you're looking to be kind of that double changer, so to speak, okay? So Mike, can I have you go ahead and share the results of that poll? Okay, what I will tell you, this is perfect. Okay, I'm so glad to see these results. What I would say to you is that this almost mirrors perfectly what I would expect to see in a much larger incoming class, say, of Duke first-year students, is that most students are looking to be that double changer. And so the good news is that you're going to be, if you don't find that your plans change substantially between now and the time you enroll in an MBA program, that you are going to be in very good company, and that you are going to look around at the members of your first year class, and you are going to find that even though maybe your backgrounds are different and the kinds of change that you're looking to make, you might be interested in one industry and function, and someone else might be interested in a different one. But you are going to find that in general, you're going to have a lot in common with your classmates, because the vast majority of them are going to be looking to make that double change as well. So I would say that in general, even though we have a relatively small sample size right here, that this maps up kind of almost perfectly with what we tend to see kind of in most MBA classes. So that's a perfect sample. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on with that. So thank you, Mike. Thank you for doing that. Okay, and so what I would like to share with you next is, again, so if you look at these headlines, again, the paradigm of the MBA program is that most students are coming in looking to switch careers in some way, shape, or form, and that indeed many do indeed make a switch of one or two kind of elements within their program. And so why is it that, that the MBA program is so well set up to help you make that sort of a shift? And so let's talk about that for a little bit. Okay, so the first is that over the period of this 2 years that you're in the program, you do have this opportunity while you are not working to consider and adjust your path. Now, that does not obviously mean that you're not just sitting back and kind of mulling over your options, because obviously you're working very hard, and the bullet right underneath it says you're gaining knowledge and building new skills. And so you're working very hard. And I think one of the things that we most consistently hear from students is that they are surprised at how quickly corporate activity starts. Even if it's not formal recruiting activity, there are going to be speakers on campus. There are going to be alumni on campus. There are going to be speakers in the classroom. And recruiting activity does begin very early. And so it's not as though you don't have to start moving in the direction of start thinking about career options. But the reality is you have the opportunity to integrate the things that you're learning along the way and adjusting your path as you move along. So you do have this opportunity to pivot in a time and a place when you're fairly early on at your career stage. I think the third point that is here is probably one of the most powerful, is that you are exposed to a world of new opportunities in a way that you probably wouldn't have the opportunity to be in at other times in your life, or certainly in your career. And I think this stat from GMAC is extremely powerful. If 40% of MBA graduates are working in an industry they never even thought about before business school, I think that's a pretty powerful stat, in that if before business school you wouldn't think that you would be working in XYZ industry, I think that is pretty powerful proof that being exposed to different coursework, being exposed to different professional clubs, being exposed to alumni, the whole array of opportunities that you get exposed to in business school. You may find something in business school that you would have never thought of before, that you all of a sudden say, wow, I really liked X far more than I would have ever thought before. And so I think that's probably one of the most powerful benefits. I think going back to the survey that we saw, that 7 of you, I think 70% or whatever the number was, said that you thought you would be a double career changer by both industry and function. The nice thing is that most MBA employers, those who hire and actively recruit large numbers of MBAs, they're very familiar with the career changer. They're not suspicious of it. They're not skeptical of it. They are familiar with what that means. They're familiar with the value of what it can bring to their organization. And so as long as you can translate the prior experience that you've had and how it can bring value into their workplace, there is kind of a carved path for that career change process in the MBA environment in ways that there may not be kind of in other places. And so I think that's also a real benefit in the MBA environment that you may not see in other places. And certainly, last but not least, one of the most powerful kind of milestones in the MBA experience is that summer internship. And, you know, one of the things I would say about the summer internship is that we don't want to put pressure on students that it has to be, you know, the most wonderful, amazing experience ever. Because sometimes students will come back and say, you know, I learned some things that I don't want to do, that I don't like doing, or I learned something about a culture that isn't a good fit for me. And sometimes learning things that you don't want to do, or things that are the negative that you want to look for kind of moving forward in your career, are sometimes just as powerful as the positives. And so again, we don't want to put too much pressure on that, but it gives you a chance. If you think that you, again, are going to be that double career changer and you want to test out both a new function and a new industry, it gives you the opportunity to do that over a 10 to 12 week period in a place where then you get to come back as a second year student and take some more classes, because maybe you found that you needed more exposure to a particular set of skills, or you found out that you actually needed more practice in a certain area than what you thought. And so again, you get to tweak and adjust a little bit more. If you went to the type of employer where they see the summer internship as a pipeline into their full-time hiring, you at least have the opportunity to earn a full-time offer and to consider a full-time offer. And so that may very well be kind of an avenue into your full-time employment, and obviously the opportunity to reflect and adjust on what do I want during my second year. So I think these are some really powerful ways in which the MBA program, kind of at an age and stage when you have the flexibility, you've got some experience under your belt, but you're not so experienced that it becomes more difficult to adjust later in life, I think is really a very powerful pivot point for a lot of students. And so these are the kinds of things that we hear from our students, that we hear from our employers as well. Okay. And what I'd like to do at this point is give you some examples. Just a second. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical troubles here. There we go. Okay. So what I thought I would do is give you some examples of career changers, of real live students from last year's graduating class who did make real career changes. And the examples on this slide are for individuals. And then the next set of examples that I'm going to give you are looking at a single industry and all of the backgrounds, or a few of the backgrounds of graduates who are going into that industry. And so here is one person who ended up going into product management at Amazon. You can see that this person did their internship at Amazon and then ended up going back there full time. And that student started up in education consulting. This was actually a nonprofit environment. And so a pretty big career change, going from education consulting in a nonprofit setting into kind of a tech product management role. So the next one here, again, another student who interned at Credit Suisse, ended up getting that full-time offer and going there full-time, came from a highly technical role in engineering at Dow. Here was somebody who came from what would be considered a pretty non-traditional background, had been a college football coach at Furman and Vanderbilt, and wanted to be in a corporate setting, and so went into a corporate finance role at Lowe's and loved that environment and went back there full time. But again, a very big change to go from coaching football into a corporate role, and ended up doing well and staying there. And then here's another example of somebody who came from a more business-focused consulting role at Accenture and wanted to do brand, tried brand for the summer, but then decided wanted to move into tech and took a product management role at Dell. So this, again, these are 4 examples out of a graduating class of over 400. So I, certainly could have given you many, many different types of examples, but I think it just gives you kind of a good look at a number of different types of career changes that can be made. And then another way to look at this is at Duke, the single largest industry from a percentage or a numbers perspective is consulting. And so typically we have about 1/3 of our class go into consulting every year. And so I thought it might be interesting to just take a look at some of the different backgrounds of graduates from last year's graduating class who went into consulting. And so this gives you kind of a good example, kind of going clockwise. You've got everything from kind of client management in financial services to human resources to entrepreneurship to fundraising to some more a different bent on financial services and corporate finance in a highly technical setting to teaching high school to the military. And so I think, again, hopefully these 2 slides are these 2 different ways of looking at, examples of career changers. Is it gives you a really good idea that that double switch of changing both industry and function, and quite honestly, both geography and size of organization as well, is extremely possible and happens all the time. And so it's something that we, thoroughly enjoy working with the students who come in and tell us that they want to make that switch, and that all what we need to do is just help them figure out how to get from where they are to where they want to be, and help them figure out kind of how to get there and how to tell their story. So there's lots of success stories in here, and again, lots of other backgrounds and logos that we could have put up there. Okay, so we've given you kind of a definition of what a career changer is, why an MBA is a good place to make a career change, some examples that came out of last year's graduating class at Duke. So now let's move to kind of a higher order, kind of a high level summary of some information about how you might go about thinking about a career change for yourself. So what I'm going to do at this point in time is ask Mike to show you the second poll, and then we'll show you the results a little bit later. So now that you've seen some more information about kind of the career change and how it's defined, what would you say are your biggest concerns? Is it that you're not sure what you want to do? Is it that you're not sure if your skills are transferable or how you're going to talk about those transferable skills? Is it that you're not sure if you want to make sure that you would be prepared for interviews in this new field. What happens if you don't like your summer internship, or is it something else? And if it's something else, go ahead and write it in the chat function so that we can capture that. And then we're going to come back to the results on this a little bit later. We're going to cover a little bit more content, and then we'll come back to that later. Okay? So I'll give you just a second to answer that. Before I move on. Okay, so now we could spend a lot of time on this slide and kind of unpacking all of what this means. And the point of this session is not to get in the weeds about, first year MBA recruiting. And I don't want to get off track with that. But my reason for sharing this with you is really to just frame up what we're going to get into next, which is kind of some recommended pre-work for the summer, and hopefully to get into any questions that you might have about things to do over the summer. And obviously the fall and the spring, the timeline is not absolute here. It can vary by school, it can vary by the industry that you're looking to get into, and obviously it can vary by the person and what you're looking for. And so this is not meant to be prescriptive, and it's certainly not absolute. What I mean here by focused career prep, for most schools that will include usually attending corporate recruiting events, and it could also include, meeting alumni and that type of thing. So again, the point here is not really to talk so much about the fall and the spring, but to just give you some context for what the summer kind of sets you up for later. So that's really kind of the point here. So what I really want to do is just kind of, again, put some context to the summer. Obviously is really the pre-work, so that you're in a good position for moving into that focused career prep stage, which then leads into the interviewing stage in the winter. And again, each school will probably have some recommended pre-work for you. And I certainly recommend that you follow each school's incoming student website. And if the Career Center has recommended pre-work for you, I certainly recommend that you follow each school's guidelines for what you do over the summer. And one of the things I said earlier is that one of the benefits of an MBA program is to consider your options from a career perspective. Career activity does start surprisingly early in most programs. And so some thoughtful preparation over the summer can obviously put you in a better position when that early activity begins. And so that's kind of my overall positioning. And so one of the first things that I recommend is really just get some basic things taken care of if you are in a position to do that over the summer. Convert to an impact-focused MBA resume. And what I mean by that is you may have heard something, an acronym called CAR, or some version of CAR, which is challenge, action, and results. And so you want the bullet points in your resume to have as many results in them as possible. Can you quantify the results of the work that you have done and the impact that it has had on your organization? When you get admitted to a business school and you decide what business school to attend, update your LinkedIn profile to indicate that you are attending business school. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile is updated to reflect that. Put together a file and bring it with you to business school with your old job description and your and your old performance reviews. If you've received any prestigious awards that you might want to talk about, either in your resume or in an interview, make sure that you get the details of those so that you can cite that, you know, the company awards 2 awards per 1,000 employees as a recognition for exemplary service, that type of thing. That's really important. If you don't know a whole lot about the particular career paths that are of interest to you, do some research over the summer, whether it's on vault.com or that type of thing. I know this seems probably really basic, but if you have not done a search on yourself online, do that, because recruiters will do that to see if there's anything that comes up that is a surprise to you or that you need to get kind of cleaned up before you go to business school, because recruiters will run searches on candidates that they are looking at. And so you want to make sure that you know what they are going to find when you get farther along in MBA recruiting processes. So get some of those basic things taken care of before you ever set foot on a business school campus. And so the next thing that I'm recommending is that you stay in touch with your existing network before you start developing your new business school network. And so if you think about the people that you consider part of your network now, whether it be your professional network kind of through the industry that you're working in now, or whether it be through your undergraduate alma mater, let those folks know that you're going to business school. Let them know where you're going. Let them know why you made that choice. Let them know what your key objectives are in going to business school. There's no ask in that message. You can send out an email to kind of a fairly large group of people. If that's really the only way you can do it, you could do it through LinkedIn. You know, it doesn't have to be personalized to each and every person. But let them know you're going to business school and why. Because then if for whatever reason you want to come back to someone later and sit down with them and talk with them more about their work, or you've got a request for them, that you've really set the stage for that. You've already let them know that you're in business school, and then it's not going to be a surprise if you do come back later. So I would definitely take the time to let your current network know that you're going to business school. And if there's anybody that you know who's working in a field that's of interest to you, that you want to learn more about, have some coffee chats before you go. You know, the purpose of coffee chats tends to be threefold. You tend to want to gain information, you tend to want to gain advice, and you tend to want to gain referrals of other people that they might recommend that you talk to. And so if there's somebody who you've always been intrigued about the work that they do, but you've just never found an excuse or a reason to sit down and learn more about what they do, you've got a perfect excuse this summer before you go to business school. So those are a couple of things that you can do to kind of set the stage for leveraging that network later. A couple of things that I might recommend. These are texts that we use in our career curriculum at Fuqua. And we use them across the board. We use them with our executive MBA students. We recommend them to our alumni. And so I think they're great tools regardless of what age and stage you're at. The StrengthsFinder 2.0 actually comes with a code for an online assessment, and it does a great job of giving you language to talk about your transferable skills. And so when we get back to identifying your concerns about being a career changer, if one of them happens to be talking about your transferable skills, I think that this is a particularly good tool for that one. And it's, I just think it's probably one of the best things that we can do is learning how to build on our strengths as opposed to focusing on our weaknesses. And then Designing Your Life was written by the two founders of the Design Thinking Center at Stanford University, and it applies design thinking principles to career development. And we use a couple of their exercises in our career course. And it's just a really interesting way of thinking about career planning and career development. And so I just highly recommend both of them. And so would recommend that you, if you have any time to do any reading over the summer. And then the last thing that I would recommend is that you find some time to do something that you enjoy, whether it just be a long weekend at the beach or whether it be a trip abroad somewhere, just to have some time for some mental health and balance. Business school is a very intense experience, and you want to go into it with feeling kind of well-balanced and with a lot of physical and mental energy. And I suspect that there may be some questions about other summer activities, whether they be, you know, pre-MBA internships or pre-MBA recruiting that are not on this list. And we can certainly talk about those maybe during the Q&A session. So we'll make sure to come back to those. But these are the things that I would definitely recommend for anyone who's going to business school, and we can come back to those later. Okay, so Mike, can I have you show the results of the second poll? Okay, good. These are nicely distributed. And I'm going to pull up the chat here so I can see what the other, oops.
Cheryl, it's Mike. I didn't see anything come through in the chat, so I guess.
Oh, okay.
They're keeping it to themselves, close to the
okay.
That one. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think in some ways, again, I think in some ways this is it's very representative because again, the career change process, although that's pretty universal, the concerns tend to be pretty unique and personal, right? And so, you know, we could do a whole session about this slide right here, the success strategies for MBA career changers. And I really want to make sure that we have plenty of time to answer questions. So I'm going to do real broad brushstrokes here. The reality is that, you know, when you go to business school, there's going to be a day in and day out sort of surround sound approach to helping each of you address these issues. So these are some very broad brushstrokes to help you think about these issues now as you think about your application to business school in the context of being a career changer, and as you think about your career plans, kind of heading into business school. You know, the reality is, so kind of just very quick, broad brush strokes, kind of looking at this list. You know, knowing why you want to change career plans, even if you don't know what you want to do. You know, you can't just be running away from something. You want to kind of really take the time to reflect. What was it about your last role, the last company, the last culture that wasn't a good fit for you? So that's something that you can do as you're leaving to get ready for business school, to really reflect upon that. You know, what was it that wasn't a good fit for you? What could you have done differently? What have you learned that you will do differently, or ask questions differently? And you want to be moving towards something instead of running away from something. The other thing really is to make sure that you really tap into how you add value. And that's that piece about transferable skills. And so if one of your concerns was being able to identify and talk about how you add value, again, I think one of the best things you could do for yourself is take that online assessment through StrengthsFinder, which is put out by Gallup. And so that's kind of my quick download on that one right there. The one piece of advice that I will say to you, and this is absolutely true in your admissions application, but certainly through the recruiting process, is to always talk about your previous employers and experiences in positive terms. Unfortunately, negative language is always going to reflect negatively on you and not on anyone else. And so the second one there is to earn credibility through hands-on experience, and I'm referencing that obviously in the business school environment, in that, you know, if you're going to be that double career changer that the vast majority of you identified, is that things like case competition, experiential learning, leadership in clubs that are relevant to the field that you want to go in, those are proof points to an employer. And so even if I'm that MBA employer that is familiar with the MBA career change process, everything that you can tell me about in this MBA environment that serves as a proof point that you're doing in this environment, or every elective that you take, everything that you do that's hands-on, builds credibility that this function or this industry is legitimately of interest to you, helps build credibility to that, and obviously helps you kind of talk credibly about the field, the function, the industry that you're looking to work in. So that's kind of what I mean there. The third one, to nurture relationships and value networks. I think one of the biggest mistakes that MBAs make, and I understand it in the here and now, is that too many of us tend to see networking as transactional in the here and now, and that if it doesn't seem to pay dividends in the immediate moment, if the person I'm networking with doesn't have a job opportunity right now, that it may be too tempting to just dismiss the value of that opportunity. The reality is that relationships are valuable over time, and networks are valuable over time, and you never know. The person who recommended that I start reading this particular business journal may actually be the person who gets me the job of my dreams, because I kept reading that journal, and that's what led me being so prepared for the interview that got me that dream job, and I didn't realize it at the time. And so really just seeing that relationship building process as being a longer term investment, and a nurturing process rather than a transactional process, because what you're looking to do is really develop relationships with people who can advocate for you and who can serve as your ambassadors. And that is not something that can be done on a transactional basis. And I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that we see students making. And kind of part and parcel with that is to focus first on likability and connection with people. I think sometimes we get so worried about impressing people with our credentials and our experiences. And the reality is that we all want to just work with people that we connect with and that we like first. And so I would focus first on those sorts of relationships, and worry less about impressing people. And again, you're going to learn a lot more about this when you get into your MBA programs. But when you're meeting people in the admissions process, I would definitely focus first on making connections with people and finding things that you have in common with them. And particularly if you come from a highly technical background, if you worked in the military, if you were an engineer, or you're some sort of technical, you're a coder or a programmer, find ways to talk about your experience in language that the everyday person can understand, so that we can understand the impact that you had on your organization. If we can't understand the impact you had on your organization, it's going to be much, much harder for us to understand and really kind of translate what a difference maker you are kind of in your former roles. So that's what that means there. And last, but certainly not least, is to really just see yourself as being in a process that for the company is a business process. talent recruitment is a business process. And if you can see yourself as a solution to one of their business challenges, which is talent recruitment, and position yourself as being a solution to one of their challenges, which is talent recruitment, and position yourself accordingly, I think you'll find that you'll think about how you position yourself as a candidate and as a career changer to be much, much more successful. And so again, we could do probably, a whole 2-hour workshop on this alone and dig much deeper into this. But these are just some really, really broad brushstrokes on kind of some really high level thoughts on kind of what we see career changers who are highly successful in the process doing that allows them to build advocacy and to be able to talk about their transferable skills in ways that really resonate with recruiters and alumni to be successful in their process. And the last thing that I will share with you, and then we're just going to open it up for questions, is that these are just some statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And these are obviously statistics that are specific to the United States labor market. But if you get a sense that over the course of kind of the average U.S. kind of worker's lifetime, we make an average of 11 to 12 job changes, that the average tenure kind of over the lifetime of that working is about 4 years in a job, that during the age that most MBA students are, from 25 to 34, the average tenure is about 2.8 years. And so obviously the tenure in jobs gets longer as we get older. And that about 5 years of our lifetime working is spent in some sort of job search activity. That these are really important skills that we need to learn to master to be successful in this process. And so, I think the way we think about this here at Fuqua is that, we want people to be successful in this process. We want them to learn to be themselves in this process and to really learn to be kind of authentic in it, and to really focus on looking for work and careers that resonates well with their interests, with their motivations, that's consistent with their values, and that so that when they get up and go to work every day, that they feel good about themselves and that they're motivated to bring their best selves to work. And so kind of with that, that concludes my presentation. And I am happy to answer any and all questions that you might have. And I see one question here that says, for the 4 examples of current Fuqua students earlier in the presentation, what made them desirable candidates and what were their biggest challenges? Okay, so I am going to go back in the presentation and take you to there. That's a great question, by the way. Okay. And I think probably for each candidate, it was perhaps slightly different. But what I'll try to do is find some commonalities as well. I think the commonalities, what I would say is the commonalities I would say is that each of them did a great job of some of the success strategies that I just mentioned, is that they knew why, that they had done a great job of thinking about, why am I looking to transition out of what I did previously? So why was I looking to move out of education consulting, for example, into tech? Or why was my college football coaching career at a time where I was looking to exit it? And could I talk intelligently about what I learned from that experience and how it was transferable into what I was looking to do? and what was transferable out of that experience, right? I think in the case, I think obviously there are specific examples where the person who was the engineer at Dow, for example, there are some very technical aspects of being an engineer, for example, you have to be very precise and very analytical, that obviously translate very well into being an investment banker. There are some very specific examples of being an analyst consultant at Accenture that translate over well into a brand management role at Hershey. And so obviously that person did a good job of connecting the dots there. But I think, again, if you can make the connection, if you can connect to the dots between what I did previously and what I want to do, and what that requires is that, again, you're aware of your why and you're aware of how you add value, but it also requires that you have a really solid understanding of the role that you want to go into. So in this case, that the person who came out of education consulting, that they had done their homework on the Amazon product management role, that they had gone to the recruiting events for Amazon, that they had talked with people who had interned in product management at Amazon, that they had networked with alums at Amazon, that type of thing, and that they had really done their homework to get ready for that, and that they had done a really good job of connecting the dots there. So I would say that those are some general tips there. I think challenges. I think one of the challenges is just always, is the interest genuine? Or is this a plan B or a plan C? Because I think one of the things that, any MBA student is always doing is kind of looking at the landscape of opportunities and kind of rank ordering as they're going through the recruiting process. Okay, I've got my plan A, but then I've got some plan B and plan C. And obviously you're doing some preparation across the board for those opportunities. And I think, how do you really make sure that you're kind of articulating your strong interest in a very persuasive and consistent way to those companies that truly are your plan A? And how do you go all in on those opportunities and really make that compelling argument? I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. Any other questions?
We did have another one come in, Sheryle, which is, I think, basically how late is too late? Is there an age cutoff for someone looking to change careers?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, it is a great question. I think if you're looking at the type of on-campus opportunity, I think it would really just depend upon if you read the job description for the type of role that the company is advertising for, is that appealing for you? And if it's not appealing to you, then I think it's that you don't invest your time and energy looking at that type of a role, but you look outside of it. Is this Jamil? Yes, I think this is Jamil's question, right? Jamil, a book that I might recommend that you read, and this is a book that we actually will use with some of our executive MBA students, is a book by a woman by the name of Dawn Graham, Graham, and it's called Switchers. And it's the subtitle is How Smart Professionals Change Careers and Seize Success. And she talks about changing careers kind of quote unquote in the real world, if you will. So outside of the traditional MBA environment. But we also work with our executive MBA students in our weekend executive and global executive program And so no, I mean, the short answer to your question is no, there's not an age cutoff. It's just a different process, I guess, is what I would say. And you kind of have to go about it in a slightly different way. I think the question really would just become, is the on-campus recruiting kind of the best avenue for you? Maybe that's the better way to approach the answer. Okay, the next question. To your knowledge, how much do test scores play a role in getting these, as an example, the 4 listed jobs? I think to a certain extent, these are all great questions. I think to a certain extent, it depends upon the degree to which you have the skills listed for the jobs addressed in other ways. So for example, if you were to say you were interested in investment banking or consulting, which tend to be the 2 industries that probably have what I would say are the most rigorous from an analytical and score-focused recruiting process, if you can address that you have other ways, maybe it's through your undergraduate GPA, maybe it's through your work experience, like if you did a lot of financial analysis or a lot of other analytical or quant work in your prior work experience, then test scores probably would play less of a role. If you don't have as much of that, then test scores could play more of a role. In other words, I think what you're looking to do is, if you're looking to go into a field where that is important, and I would say of the fields we've profiled here, I'd say investment banking and consulting are the 2 where that's more important. You want to be able to address that you have the capacity kind of intellectually and analytically to do that type of work, as long as you can find evidence of that. It doesn't have to be done through test scores. Does that answer your question?
And Sheryle, there had been a question at the beginning, and I don't know if we have the time for you to do a brief overview, but since today's webinar was really focused on career changers, are there any significant things you would call out for somebody that's looking to use an MBA as a career enhancement that might be different, you know, for like the preparing to come to the MBA, things that you might do differently in that summer before, or any sort of different prep for someone that's doing the enhancement route?
You know, it's not significantly different, Allison. It's actually, also a really good question. And the bottom line is that, any one of you could change your thought process at a given point, right? You could all of a sudden discover some new angle on what you're doing that maybe would change your thought process about what you're doing. And maybe you would then, I'm going to go back to the success strategies here. Or, oh, you said the summer pre-work. No, I wouldn't. I would not. I think probably the biggest challenge that somebody who is an enhancer may face overall, unless you're sponsored by your company or you're going back to a family business, generally speaking, the biggest challenge that somebody, like let's just say, for example, that you came from brand management and you want to go back to brand management, but you're just not sponsored by a company, you'll just be finding a job in that space. The biggest challenge is just being able to communicate that that's not a fallback plan for you, is that this is really your first choice. And so communicating that, again, kind of in a clear and compelling way, would probably just be the biggest challenge, because you wouldn't want someone to think that you're doing that as kind of, well, this is my fallback plan if I don't get anything else. But otherwise, no, I think really the steps really are the same. And I think the other thing too is that you know, again, if brand management were your field of expertise, is kind of how do you communicate kind of flexibility and openness about kind of what you're looking for, you know, that type of thing. So I think some of it is just, if you know a lot about the field, you might be competing against career changers who are very flexible because they're just looking for an opportunity. So what do you look like competitively differently in comparison to people who are career changers? So, but fundamentally, no, I wouldn't recommend, I wouldn't recommend anything any differently. Okay, any other questions?
Looks like the main balance of questions have either been answered by Allison or Sheryle. You've kind of taken care of the rest, it looks like. I don't see anything else coming through on the chat or the Q&A. So I guess with that, I think we may be concluded.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks, ClearAdmit, for hosting us today, and thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Sheryle, for sharing your insight and expertise. And of course, any follow-up questions that anybody has for myself or for Sheryle, you can reach us at Fuqua at admissions-info@fuqua.duke.edu. We'll be happy to answer individual questions as well.
That sounds great, and I want to thank you guys both as well, Allison and Sheryle, for presenting and joining us today, as well as all the attendees who took time out to come and join and learn more about yes, Duke, but also, you know, being a career changer in an MBA program. So again, just for those who may have joined late, we do record these sessions, and that video will be available later today, either through Duke or on clearadmit.com. So feel free to come back, watch it again, review. Take your notes and all that fun stuff. And thanks again, and enjoy the holiday season, and Happy New Year to all of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.